My name is Francesca, and I just graduated from State Community College last month. I graduated with a full scholarship, which was a real salvation, because my parents made it clear from the very beginning that they would not financially support me. That suited me fine. I didn't want to be a burden to them, I didn't want to feel obligated. That's why I realized early on that I can only count on myself. I got a job at a coffee shop near the campus and worked there for all 4 years. There were days when after the night shift you had to go straight to the lecture, and in the evening you had to stand at the counter again. Sometimes it seemed that I couldn't do it, that I wasn't strong enough, but I held on. I saved up enough to buy a decent laptop for studying, and when my old phone broke down, I was able to afford a new one. I was used to relying on myself, and it gave me a strange but firm sense of freedom. Everything I achieved was my own achievement. But sometimes it was hard not to notice the difference in attitude. Especially when it came to my older sister, Daphne. Daphne had been married to Durant for 5 years. They have 2 children, Alberto, who is 4, and Sarah, who recently turned 2. And whenever Daphne came to visit with the kids, my parents found a way to help her. Here's some money for groceries, here's new baby clothes. Mom quietly put bills in Daphne's hand, Dad brought bags of things. I watched it in silence, but with each such encounter, a feeling grew inside, not envy, no, rather misunderstanding. Why does one daughter deserve to be cared for, while the other deserves only an approving pat on the shoulder for independence? When such a scene happened for the 3rd time in a month, I couldn't stand it. Mom and I were left alone in the kitchen, and I asked why they were so willing to help Daphne, but they never offered to help me. I tried to speak calmly, without reproach, but my voice was still shaking. Mom's face tightened, petrified. Daphne has children to take care of, she replied shortly. And you only have you. End of discussion. And everything. It's that simple. It was as if my life and my hardships were worth less just because I didn't have children. Mom's words remained in me like a jagged mark, and for a long time I could not get rid of this feeling, as if I had been left out as an unnecessary thing. When my graduation day came, my parents threw a party. The house was filled with relatives and family friends. I should have been happy, I should have been proud, but all I felt was annoyance and some kind of dull resentment. I knew that this holiday was not for me. He was for them. An opportunity to put on the mask of caring parents again and hear how well they did, having raised such an independent daughter. We'll figure it out, Mom said the day before the party. You just enjoy your big day. It wasn't until later that I found out that dealing with everything meant spending the $500 I'd been saving for 2 months. The money I was saving to pay for my first rental. They invited everyone they could, relatives, friends from the church, neighbors. They accepted compliments with a smile all evening. You two have done such a wonderful job with both of your girls, Aunt Inez admired. It's amazing how you support them, my father's friend added. I stood there with my lips pressed together tightly, keeping a polite, practiced smile on my face. I was silent because I knew that if I opened my mouth, I would say too much. Towards the end of the evening, when the guests were starting to get home, Uncle Pete cornered me by the punch bowl. Well, Francesca? He asked. What are your plans now that you have a degree? I plan to find a job and rent my own place, I replied. But before I could finish, Mom appeared next to me. Her hand rested on my shoulder, her gaze was soft, almost caring, but I knew it was fake. Oh, Francesca, there's no need to rush the rent, she said in that sweet voice that turned on when she wanted to make an impression. She can stay with us for now, save on rent. I turned to her, startled. That was the first thing I heard about this proposal. That's so generous of you, Linda, Uncle Pete said. It's hard for young people to get started. I just nodded, not knowing what to say. Was it a concern? Or another attempt to keep me under control? The next morning, at breakfast, Mom and Dad raised the issue again. "We talked yesterday." Dad began, buttering his toast without looking at me. "You can stay here while you look for a job. No need to spend money on rent." Thanks," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll think about it." And I was really thinking. Long and hard. Everything seemed too confusing, too complicated. I didn't know what to choose, freedom with debt or comfort with a taste of addiction. While I was thinking, I was looking for a job. I sent out dozens of resumes, and pretty quickly I got lucky. I got an offer from the company. Entry-level jobs, mostly data entry, answering phone calls. It was far from what I dreamed of, but it was a chance. My first chance. But that was the beginning of the problem. My starting salary of $2,800 per month did not allow me to rent the apartment I dreamed of. Everything in my price range was located far outside the city, in the suburbs, and that would mean spending 2 to 3 hours a day traveling one way. I counted and recalculated, trying to find a compromise, but in the end the numbers didn't add up. Meanwhile, my parents' house was only a 15-minute walk from my new office. After much thought, I reluctantly told my parents that I would stay with them for a while. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said and hugged me. For the first time in a long time, her hug seemed sincere to me. And at first it really seemed that everything was getting better. About 2 weeks after I started my new job, the atmosphere in the house changed. Mom cooked my favorite dishes. Dad asked me how my day was when I returned home. I naively thought that maybe they had really changed, that maybe they would finally start to appreciate me. I almost believed that their concern was real. Almost. Then I got my first paycheck. That evening, at dinner, my father put down his fork and said, "Of course we need to talk." Mom nodded, her gaze was focused, and I immediately realized that something important was about to follow. "We're glad you're here," Mom began. "But now you're a working adult." "Yes," said my father. "Therefore, we expect you to contribute $400 per month for rent and another $200 for food." I almost choked on my meatloaf. $600. It was a fifth of my net salary. I swallowed a piece and said cautiously, "600? It seems a bit cool." Mom smiled softly. "That's a lot less than you'd pay for your own place. And that includes utilities." I couldn't argue with that. My stomach clenched, but I knew I had no other choice. "Okay," I agreed. "I can handle it." That's how my new routine began. I worked from Monday to Friday, paid the rent on the first of each month, and tried to save at least a little of what was left. I wasn't accumulating savings as fast as I'd hoped, but my account balance was slowly but steadily growing. It wasn't perfect, but at least it was stable. Manageable. This went on for several months. I got used to the new rhythm, learned to find a balance between work, home, and my modest pleasures. I spent my evenings in my room, rereading old books or trying not to think about how slowly I was moving towards my independence. But one day, on a cold October evening, everything changed. I returned home, and when I opened the door, I froze on the threshold. There were suitcases in the living room. Daphne was sitting on the couch, looking annoyed. Durant paced back and forth nervously, muttering to himself. Alberto was running around the coffee table, and Sarah, red from crying, was in her mother's arms. "What's going on?" I asked, putting my purse on the floor. Daphne scowled at me. "Durant's been demoted," she said sharply. "We can no longer afford to pay the rent. We're moving here. Until everything gets better." I forced a smile. But she was screaming inside. She screamed in despair, powerlessness, and a premonition that whispered, "This is not going to end well for you." And I was right. Within a few days, my life turned into a quiet nightmare. Daphne wasn't working. She stayed at home, taking care of the children, but seemed to barely touch them. Every night, as soon as I walked in the door, she was already reaching for her purse. "Oh, good, you're home," she said, and without waiting for an answer, she left. "Alberto needs help with coloring, and Sarah just woke up." And she left. Meeting friends, going shopping, sometimes just disappearing with Durant, leaving me with 2 kids in absolute silence in response to my questions. I didn't mind the first few times. I loved Alberto and Sarah, no matter what. But day after day, week after week, I came home not to rest, but to work again. I was exhausted. All day at the office, and then an evening with the kids. My own chores, washing, cooking for tomorrow, even just taking a shower, were postponed until late at night, when I could no longer feel my legs or back. And then one day, at dinner, I couldn't stand it. "I can't do this anymore," I said, rearranging the food on my plate. "I get very tired after work. I can't keep an eye on the kids every night." There was silence. Dense, deaf. Then Daphne grinned. "Are you serious?" She put down her fork. "Do you think you're getting tired? Try to be a mom." I felt a wave of indignation rise in me, but before I could respond, Dad shook his head. "Family helps family," he said. "That's what we do." "Then why don't you guys look after the kids at least sometimes?" Mom shook her head with that expression she had when she thought the question was stupid. "We're too old to be chasing babies all evening." I pressed my lips together to keep from saying something harsh. I wanted to remind her that I didn't have to chase them after a 10-hour day, either. But I didn't say anything. Deep down, I knew it didn't make sense. Nothing changed during the next month. I continued to work, continued to pay the rent, continued to babysit. My savings account, which I was so proud of, remained at the same level. Then, about 2 months after Daphne and her family moved in, Mom and Dad dropped another bomb over dinner. "Of course," Dad began in his serious voice, "we need to increase your rent." I looked up from my plate. "Our expenses have increased with the increase in the number of people in the house," he continued. "We are asking for an additional $200 per month." I almost choked on it. $800? I asked slowly. "This is almost a third of my salary." "It's still cheaper than renting your own place," my father pointed out. I looked around the table, then at my sister and her husband. "And how much do Daphne and Durant pay?" There was silence in the room. Mom and Daphne exchanged glances. "Your sister can't afford to pay the rent," Mom finally said firmly. "She has a family to support. You're single, you don't have such responsibilities, so you need to help more." Something inside me snapped, but I forced myself to hold back. "I see," was all I said. That night, lying in bed, I started searching the internet for apartments closer to work. The cheapest decent studio cost $1,500 per month, plus utilities. With my current salary, it would be tough, but I could handle it if I was careful. The problem was something else: advance payments. The first and last months, a security deposit. I needed at least $4,000 to move in. I decided to lay low and actively save. No more trips to the coffee shop, no takeaways, no new clothes. Every penny went to my escape fund. But the universe, or more precisely, my family, had other plans. A week later, the washing machine broke down. Mom came into my room in the evening, looking guilty. "Of course, I don't want to ask, but we need a new washing machine," she began. "There are 5 adults and 2 children in the house. We can't go to the laundry. Could you lend us some money? We'll pay you back, I promise." I paid $700 for a new washing machine. Not top end, but decent. A month later, when I reminded my mom about the loan, her face instantly changed. Are you really asking your parents to give you the money back? What is it? She asked, narrowing her eyes. After all we've done for you? But you said it yourself. I can't believe how ungrateful you are, she interrupted me. I felt like I'd been hit. But the blows continued. It was the furniture in the living room, mutilated by Alberto and Sarah, chalk on the couch, spilled juice, torn upholstery. Thanksgiving is coming soon, Dad said. The whole family is coming. We can't let them see the living room like this. I paid another $1,200 for new furniture. Then the coffee maker broke, $150. The microwave oven is $200. Dishwasher, $500. Every purchase was extremely necessary. Each time, they were convinced that this was the last time. My savings did not grow. They were melting. Every time I checked my balance, I felt something heavy shrink inside me. And then December came. A cold wind was hitting the windows, and with it came a new problem. The roof is leaking, Dad announced at breakfast. If we don't fix it before spring, when it rains, the whole house may flood. I put down my fork and looked at him slowly. How much will it cost? I already knew where this was going to lead. About $3,000, Mom said. We know it's a lot, Dad added. But it's urgent. $3,000 is almost all I have left. But what choice did I have? It was their house, but it was mine too. At least for now. Okay, I said, writing them a check with a trembling hand. But I really can't afford any more big expenses. Of course, dear, Mom looked at me with that tight smile she always used to cover up unpleasant conversations. That's the last thing I promise. Dad nodded. We will invite a contractor next week. But the next week has passed. And another one. The contractor never showed up. When I asked cautiously, Dad mumbled something about the difficulties with the schedule, that contractors always do this. Mom deftly changed the subject every time I tried to bring up the renovation. I tried not to think about the worst, not to let myself suspect that my money had gone wrong. But the anxiety grew every day. Then came Saturday morning, which changed everything. I woke up late, enjoying the rare weekend when I could take my time. I went downstairs slowly, and the first thing I saw were the suitcases at the front door. Mom, Dad, Daphne, Durant, and the kids were bustling around packing the car. Alberto was chasing after Sarah, and there was a kind of feverish joy all around. What's going on? I asked, still not fully awake. Mom turned around, and something like confusion flashed in her eyes. Oh, good morning, sweetheart, she said too cheerfully. We're going on a little trip. A trip to Florida, Dad added cheerfully. Our friends have a guest house there. We'll be staying for 2 weeks, until Christmas. I froze. Where did you get the money for a vacation in Florida? I knew the answer, but I asked anyway. Mom looked away. We used the money for the roof, she said softly. We will save up for repairs again after the holidays. My vision blurred with anger. You mean my money? I took a step forward. The $3,000 I gave you for emergency roof repairs? Of course, Dad said in his warning tone. Don't make a scene. But I didn't care. I gave you this money because you said it was urgent. I've been giving you money for months, while I pointed to Daphne and Durant, who were suddenly looking at the floor, have been living here for free. If you don't have enough money, Mom said coldly, you need to work harder. Maybe find a second job. Yes, Daphne interjected, shrugging her shoulders. That's what adults do when they need more money. And just like that, they left. They walked out the door, smiling, as if they were leaving me not in a house with a leaky roof and a broken heart, but on the threshold of some joyful adventure. I stood motionless, listening to the sound of the engine receding, and suddenly realized how quiet it had become. For the first time in months. No childish screams, no Daphne complaining, no parental reproaches that made me feel guilty. Just silence. In that silence, everything became clear. It will never stop. They will take and take until there is nothing left of me, no money, no energy, no self-respect. I sat down at the kitchen table. I don't know how long I've been sitting there. But when I got up, I already knew what to do. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. My finger froze on the name of Lisa, a friend from work. She mentioned that her sister is looking for a roommate. I pressed call. "Hi, Lisa," I said when she answered. "Is your sister still looking for someone to share the apartment? Can I get her number?" Megan lived in an apartment just 2 blocks from my office. Convenient location, reasonable rent. It seemed that fate had extended a hand to me. I called her right away. "Lisa told me about you," Megan said as soon as I introduced myself. "She says you're reliable and clean. I would be glad if you would become my neighbor." I didn't hesitate. "I agree." The next morning, I called the transportation company. "I need to move some furniture and household appliances today. It's urgent." They arrived 2 hours later. By evening, everything I had bought over the months was already in Megan's apartment. She was thrilled. "This is amazing," she said, running her hand over the new sofa. "My place was so empty before that." "I'm glad it worked out," I replied, putting my clothes in the new closet. I slept better that night than I had in months. And maybe even for years. My new room was small but clean. The window overlooked a modest courtyard. But most importantly, it was my place. My territory. And no one had the right to demand or take anything here. The next 2 days passed quietly. I went to work, returned home to my new apartment, and enjoyed this new sense of freedom. There were no more difficult conversations, no underlying sense of duty, no fear of another. "We know it's a lot, but it's urgent." I didn't tell my parents that I moved out. What for? To listen to accusations of selfishness? To make excuses for wanting to have your own life? No, let them find out how it turns out. But it happened faster than I thought. 2 days before Christmas, my phone vibrated. A message from Mom. "We'll be home tomorrow afternoon. Please make dinner." Nothing special, just something warm. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They still thought I was their personal cook, maid, and ATM machine. I laughed. Loudly. The laughter was harsh, even a little bitter. But there was freedom behind that laugh. The next day, I left work early and returned to my parents. For the last time. I wasn't going to cook. I ordered food at a cheap Italian restaurant nearby, simple pasta, salad, garlic bread. She laid it all out on the dining room table, the only piece of furniture left in their living room. I even set out the plates and cutlery, as if to say goodbye. And then I went out, closing the door behind me. I locked it with a key that I never intended to use again. The next morning, on Christmas Eve, I was woken up by a barrage of missed calls and texts. One thing after another. "Where's all the furniture? Call me back now. Father. What have you done? Call me back immediately. Mom. You're so selfish, Mom's crying because of you. Daphne." I put the phone back on the bedside table. I went into the kitchen and calmly made myself a cup of coffee in a new coffee maker. She drank it slowly, enjoying every warm drop, feeling the inner tension go away with each sip. At 10 in the morning, after breakfast and a shower, I finally picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. She answered on the first ring. Francesca, what's going on? You can't just take things from our house. I kept my voice steady. I didn't take anything that belonged to you. Everything I took was bought with my money. Check your credit card statements if you don't believe me. But, where are you? I moved out. I found a place closer to work. There was a pause on the phone, and then the mother's voice changed from angry to grumbling, almost pleading. Honey, go home. Let's talk. It's Christmas tomorrow, we're a family, we should be together. The family doesn't exploit each other. I could barely keep the tremor out of my voice. A family doesn't take $3,000 for urgent roof repairs to spend on a vacation in Florida. We made a mistake, Mom whispered, as if afraid that no one would hear her. We will refund your money. Just come home for Christmas. I almost flinched. Almost. But then I heard Daphne's voice in the background. Tell her that we need money for the roof now. And everything. My resolve grew stronger again. I'm not coming back. Not on Christmas Day, never again. And I won't give you another cent. The roof is not my problem. I finished. This house is your property. Figure it out for yourself. Mom screamed. You're ungrateful. Goodbye, Mom. Merry Christmas. I dropped the call and blocked their numbers. Everyone. Mom. Dad. Daphne. Even Durant. I turned off my phone, as if I was finally putting an end to this chapter of my life. Then I put on my jacket and went for a walk in the new neighborhood. The city seemed different to me. Spacious, clean, even free. I walked slowly, enjoying the silence, the fresh air, and the knowledge that I belonged only to myself. The next day was Christmas. Megan went to live with her parents, and the apartment was completely at my disposal. I made a good breakfast. I put a candle on the table and lit it, just to mark this new stage. Then I watched old Christmas movies all day. I ordered Chinese food in the evening. And for the first time in many years, I felt really calm. People might think that spending Christmas alone is sad. But it wasn't something new to me. And to be honest, I felt calm for the first time in a long time. No one took advantage of me, no one made me feel guilty, no one emptied my bank account or my energy. That day, in the silence and warmth of my new apartment, I realized how easy it is to breathe when there are no people around who pull you down. It's been 6 months since I left my parents' house. 6 months of peace, saving money, and building a life that finally belonged only to me. Life with Megan was great. We easily found a common language, shared our responsibilities honestly, and respected each other's personal space. Sometimes on weekends they cooked dinner together or hosted a TV series evening, but everything was without pressure, without a sense of duty. If I wanted to be alone in my room, that was fine. No hard feelings, no reproaches. The peace of mind that I've missed so much before. Last month, my cousin Rachel called me unexpectedly. "Hi, Francesca," she said hesitantly. "I thought you should know." I was wary, expecting something unpleasant. "Your parents, they had to take out a loan to repair the roof." I wasn't surprised. "How do you know that?" I asked, even though the answer was already obvious. "Your mom told my mom. She made it look like they were barely coping, and all because you left them." Rachel paused, as if weighing whether to continue. I told my mom what really happened. "I hope you don't mind." "It's more than okay," I said. "Thanks, Rachel." We were silent for a while. This short dialogue was enough. I felt a little relieved. Maybe the truth will finally start to come out. Rachel also mentioned that Daphne and her family still live with their parents. But something has changed. Mom and Dad finally started charging them rent. They were forced to contribute to the payment of groceries and household expenses. She said everything was going fine now. I didn't say anything. What could I say? If this had happened earlier, if they had treated me with at least half the responsibility they started demanding from Daphne, maybe I wouldn't have left. But I knew that my place was somewhere else now. And I wasn't going back. Life went on as usual. 2 months ago, I was assigned to lead a small project team at work, and I did it. Yesterday, the boss called me to her office. "Francesca," she began, smiling, "I'm impressed with your work. We are opening a new position of assistant manager in the department. I want you to apply." I tried to hide my excitement, but my heart was already pounding in my throat. "That would be great," I said as calmly as I could. "The salary will be $48,000 a year," she added. "That's significantly more than you're getting now. An increase of almost 10,000. It was more than I expected. With that kind of money, I could afford my own place sooner than I had planned. I returned home that evening and immediately started looking through apartment listings. Nothing special, just a small studio apartment, within walking distance from work. I found several options within my budget, all with the availability to move in June or July. The ideal time is if I get a promotion. I also started looking for ideas for decorating my future home. Simple, nothing expensive, but to make the space truly mine. I created a digital mood board, soft shades of blue and gray, with yellow accents. Minimalistic furniture, light textures, lots of greenery. I imagined a space that would be my refuge. Quiet, peaceful. A place where no one has power over me. Last weekend, I went to Target to buy some small items when I suddenly saw them. Mom, Dad, and Daphne. They were pushing a cart to HomeGoods. I stood behind the window, watching. Something inside me flinched when our eyes met. Daphne noticed me first, nudged her mom, and nodded in my direction. Mom looked at it, froze for a second, and then abruptly turned the cart around and walked in the other direction. Dad followed her in silence, not even turning around. It was unpleasant. A little bit. How to tear at an old wound. But I stood my ground until they were out of sight. I remembered all the months when they used me, all the talk about money, all the manipulations and reproaches. The pain is gone. They made their choice. I am one of my own. 2 weeks ago, I saw them again. This time at the grocery store. Just Mom and Daphne. They were arguing about something in the cereal department. I walked past them with my basket. None of them recognized me. I didn't fit either. What was the point? We lost what bound us a long time ago. Their world and mine were 2 different worlds. I left one of them behind. My Aunt Inez called me the other day. She is her father's sister and has always been more reasonable than the rest of the family. There was caution in her voice, but also something else, as if she had been collecting her thoughts for a long time before dialing my number. "Your parents are having trouble paying off the loan," she said finally. "They have already started asking the family for help." I sighed. "I hope no one gives them money," I replied. "Most of us already know better," Aunt Inez chuckled, but there was weariness in her voice. "Your cousin told us what they did to you. I'm not surprised they're looking for their next victim." "Are Daphne and Durrance still there?" I asked. "Yes," she confirmed. "But your parents started charging them rent 3 months ago. Daphne is furious. She says she was promised that she would be able to live there for free." I chuckled. "That sounds familiar." "They fight all the time," Inez sighed. "Your mom called me last week, crying, saying that Daphne called her a selfish old witch." I couldn't help but laugh. "How ironic," I muttered. Will you ever talk to them again? Aunt asked cautiously. I thought about it. Not in the near future, she answered honestly. Maybe someday. If they sincerely apologize and change their habits. But I didn't hold my breath. I don't blame you, she said. No matter how important it is. I think you did the right thing. Her support was important. It was nice to know that not everyone in the family believed the version of events that my parents told others. The truth still finds its way, even if slowly. Megan and I had dinner together last night. She made pasta, I brought wine, and we sat at the table for a long time, discussing everything and nothing. Did you find any apartments? What is it? She asked between sips of wine. I liked a few, I admitted. But I'm waiting for news about the promotion before I decide. Megan nodded. I'm going to miss you as a neighbor, she said, smiling sincerely. But I understand why you want to have your own place. Thank you for understanding. And for being such a wonderful neighbor for the last 6 months, I smiled back. You really helped me when I needed it. That's what friends do, she replied simply. And she was right. Real friends, real family, are those who help without keeping score, without expecting anything in return, without exploiting vulnerabilities. This is support that comes from love, not interest. I received an email from the HR department this morning. I was invited to an interview for the position of assistant manager. The meeting was scheduled for next Tuesday. I've been preparing all day. I thought through possible questions, rehearsed the answers, and chose an outfit. I went through several blouses, tried on 2 jackets, and stood in front of the mirror for a long time, assessing every detail. And at some point, when I was hanging one of the jackets back up, my gaze fell on the reflection. I looked different. More confident. Easier. And it wasn't just that I was smiling more. It was a different me. The one who no longer carried the weight of other people's expectations and debts on her shoulders. 6 months ago, I was drowning, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. I was exhausted by the people who were supposed to love me. The people who chose me as a resource that can be used to the last. But now everything has changed. Now I'm building a life on my own terms. I'm working to get a promotion. I'm saving money for my own place. And there are people around me who respect me. Which don't make me justify my every move. Sometimes I miss my family. Honestly. I miss not the people who were, but who I would like them to be. I miss my mother, who would be proud of my successes, and my father, who would support me instead of demanding more money. For a family where I would be loved, not obligated. But I don't miss the family I had. For those who only saw me as an ATM. For those who asked for help, but never gave it in return. Maybe someday they will change. Maybe someday we can talk again. But I won't wait. I'm going ahead. My life is just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, she truly feels like mine. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.